Picture this. You wake up choking on the sour stench of your own decay. Your legs no longer belong to you. They are purple, bursting with sores, weeping pus into the soiled linens that cling to your thighs like damp rags in a butcher's shop. The morning light cuts through the heavy tapestries, but nothing touches the cold. Every bone aches, every breath sounds like a broken bellows. The chamber is still, yet not silent. The scurry of rats beneath the floorboards, the faint gurgle of blood in your throat, and somewhere behind you, the wet scraping of a nursemaid wringing out cloths soaked in your filth. You are alone in a palace, but the world has already begun to rot you from the inside. You are King Henry VIII, and you are dying. But this is no peaceful passing. No candlelit deathbed surrounded by weeping heirs. What follows is the slow and gruesome unmaking of a man who built an empire on broken bodies. Before we journey into these forgotten tales of survival and suffering, if you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths of history, please consider liking this video and hitting that subscribe button for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. Born in the damp grey dawn of Tudor ambition in the year 1509, Henry Tudor is not meant to be king. He is the second son, handsome and athletic, a spare. The crown is his brother Arthur's burden, but Arthur dies young, likely of the sweating sickness, and with that, the heavy chains of expectation fall onto Henry's neck before he has even come of age. He is 17 when his father, the severe and calculating Henry VII, dies. In his first act as monarch, Henry VIII marries his dead brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon, securing a Spanish alliance and papal favour. At first, he shines. Golden hair, strong limbs, and a jousting spirit beloved by the people. Thomas More describes him as a model of majesty. For a time, England is drunk on his promise. But the foundations of Henry's reign are already cracked. He has inherited a suspicious court, hungry nobles, and a kingdom still haunted by the Wars of the Roses. His obsession with legacy blooms early. He believes in divine right. He believes in providence. Most dangerously, he believes that he alone knows God's will. As he grows into power, so too does his hunger for control. Henry is not content to rule within limits. He shatters them. When the Pope refuses to annul his marriage to Catherine, Henry severs England from Rome. Thus is born the Church of England, and with it, the beginning of unchecked power. To understand what Henry will become, we must understand what he destroys: 6 wives, countless courtiers, monasteries, scholars, even children. He dismantles centuries of religious tradition and personal allegiance for the sake of male heirs who never live long enough to console him. But even as his empire swells, his body begins to betray him. After a catastrophic jousting accident in January 1536, a festering leg wound will never heal. From this moment onward, the body of the king begins to rot, and with it, so does his mind. Years passed, and with each passing year, the great gilded machine of court ritual transforms into a prison, one built not of stone, but of whispers, blood, and unbearable pain. What happened next inside the walls of Whitehall was not the glorious twilight of a lion in winter. It was the slow, deliberate mutilation of a man by the very system he built. The corridor outside your chamber stinks of boiled meats and old sweat. Courtiers bow low, but none meet your eyes. They smell your death before you do. They know your leg is gangrenous. They know your belly is distended and leaking from old surgical scars. They know your appetite is monstrous and unrelenting. What they do not know, what they dare not guess, is the grotesque cost of their silence. The Tudor court has become a grotesque theatre, and you are both monarch and prisoner. By the year 1544, Henry is no longer a king, but an enormous, pulsing wound in silks. His weight has ballooned beyond 30 stone. His leg, once fractured by a fall from his horse, becomes an open ulcer that never heals. Pus seeps into his stockings, fills the room with the sweet iron rot of slow death. Surgeons cannot cauterize it, leeches fail, syrups only dull the agony, leaving him half lucid and snarling with paranoia. The court adapts. No one dares mention the smell. Servants develop silent systems to remove soiled bandages. His throne is modified with a padded mechanism so he may relieve himself without standing. Entire sections of palaces are sealed off to keep the stench from foreign envoys. Music is played louder. Incense burns thicker. These are not acts of compassion. They are acts of survival. Henry's mind, fed on treason, becomes a ravenous thing. His mood swings devour ministers, wives, friends. In 1536, Anne Boleynant's adored, once the reason he ripped an entire church from the rootsis, dragged to the scaffold and beheaded. He marries Jane Seymour, who gives him the son he craved, Edward, but dies 12 days later from puerperal fever. Henry weeps, then forgets. He marries again and again. Anne of Cleves, discarded as a Flanders mare. Catherine Howard, a girl of barely 15, accused of adultery and executed. Catherine Parr, clever and docile, survives only by mastering the art of fear. Meanwhile, the system thrives. Thomas Cromwell, the architect of Anne's downfall and the king's most efficient butcher, builds a bureaucracy that operates like clockwork: arrest, extract confession, execute. Then Cromwell, too, is beheaded. No one is safe. Loyalty means nothing. Obedience is everything. It is not only courtiers who suffer. England's monasteries are stripped bare, their monks turned out to starve or burn. Peasants who speak against the king's great matter, his obsession with annulment, are flayed, hung, or left to rot in iron cages. Even the English Bible, once a symbol of liberation, becomes a tool of control, edited to reflect Henry's divine right. The word of God bends to one man's will. But within the palace walls, the king himself is drowning. He no longer walks without aid. His body is packed in layers of linen to absorb the fluids. The smell wakes sleeping guards. His appetite turns cruel. Entire tables cleared, wine poured down his throat, meat ripped with yellowed teeth. Every indulgence masks the rot. Every feast delays the reckoning. Physicians lie to him. Ministers flatter him. Priests assure him of God's favour. The system wraps him in velvet while he slowly digests himself. To outsiders, the pageantry continues. Trumpets, jousts, stained glass. But the truth seeps through the cracks in his bed linens. England's most powerful man is festering in real time. He is both master and captive of a regime that no longer serves the nation, but serves only his decay. And yet, there are moments, slim ones, when the man buried beneath the crown reaches out. He writes poetry, once. He plays a lute, briefly. He asks for his children. But then the pain returns, and with it the rage. A servant looks too long. A page forgets to bow. A physician whispers the word amputation. Heads roll, blood pools. To understand the full horror of Henry's final years, we must turn to those who stood closest: the physicians, the wives, the children, those who saw the emperor not in glory but in filth. But even as Henry's body bloated and blistered beneath his embroidered robes, the mechanisms of power moved onward, polishing his image while hiding the carnage. The court had become a living organism that fed on Henry's delusion and spat out ruin in return. It is here, in this gilded labyrinth of fear and obedience, that the cost of institutional survival becomes most clear. Henry no longer sees faces, he sees functions. Advisors, wives, even children are reduced to roles. The physician must soothe, the wife must produce, the servant must vanish. Everything revolves around keeping the king alive, not because his life is sacred, but because his death might mean upheaval. He has become the poisoned heart of an empire, yet none dare extract it. The physical infrastructure of this system is precise. Secret passageways allow courtiers to flee unseen. Food tasters stand ready to die for a bite of mutton. Dozens of tailors toil to craft garments that disguise his swelling limbs and oozing sores. His beds are reinforced with beams to hold his bulk. His chairs are angled to ease pressure on his ulcerated thigh. Nothing is said aloud, but everyone adjusts. Every whisper, every glance is a calculation for survival. Even within his inner circle, those who displease him vanish without explanation. Sir Anthony Denny, his most trusted groom of the Stoolth man, who manages his excretion walks a razor's edge daily. His reward for loyalty is proximity to filth. He manages Henry's pain, his hygiene, his moods. It is a job no one envies. It is a job that can end in death. The hypocrisy is grotesque. While Henry's body rots, the arts flourish. Hans Holbein paints regal portraits that never betray the truth beneath the robes. Poets sing of a golden age. Foreign envoys write letters filled with awe. But in private, their dispatches describe the unbearable stench, the way the king groans in his sleep, how his ulcers drip even during audiences. It is not just Henry who suffers. Catherine Parr, his sixth wife, walks on glass. A reformist at heart, she writes prayers, educates his children, and survives by pretending submission. In public, she praises his wisdom. In private, she fears his wrath. One argument nearly leads to her arrest. She narrowly escapes only by feigning repentance at his bedside, stroking his bloated hand while whispering that he is wiser than any scholar. The psychological impact on his children is incalculable. Mary, born of Catherine of Aragon, is declared a bastard, then reinstated. She learns early that her worth lies in obedience. Elizabeth, daughter of Anne Boleyn, sees her mother beheaded before she is 3. She becomes a master of silence. Even Edward, the longed-for son, is kept cloistered, his frail body a reflection of his father's decaying dream. Those who might oppose the king are destroyed through spectacle. Public executions at Tower Hill become theatre. Heads on Spike's Line, London Bridge. Torture is used, liberally thumbs crushed, intestines drawn out. The message is clear. To resist the king is to cease existing, body and soul. And yet, some do resist, quietly. Servants help smuggle letters between terrified wives. Physicians slip laudanum into tinctures to dull the king's pain and, sometimes, their own guilt. Religious reformers hide forbidden books in false-bottomed trunks. These acts rarely succeed, but they mark the last flickers of agency within a system designed to extinguish it. Henry himself is increasingly alone, surrounded by cowards made by his own hand. He speaks often to ghosts. Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, his mother Elizabeth of York. He weeps sometimes. He prays. But mostly, he rages. He is a man held upright by a court that dares not let him fall. His body, collapsing in on itself, becomes a monument to tyranny's ultimate truth, that unchecked power does not just destroy others, it devours its host. What happened next was not only the death of a man, but the slow collapse of a regime built on silence, fear, and the stench of rotting flesh masquerading as divine rule. To understand Henry's final unraveling, we must descend into those last months when the illusion of control shattered completely. It is January in the year 1547. The frost creeps through the palace stones and settles into the king's marrow. The air inside his chambers hangs heavy with musk, frankincense, and something fouler, the persistent perfume of decay. The servants double the tapestries, but they cannot keep out the truth. You, once the Lion of England, now wheeze like a broken bellows each night, slipping into sleep with a prayer that you will not wake. Your leg has become a crater of necrotic tissue, ringed in black and oozing pus that eats through the linens before they can be changed. The surgeons no longer suggest amputation, they know it will kill you. But so will this. So you are packed like spoiled meat in cloth, sprinkled with herbs to mask the smell. The chambermaids vomit when they clean the wound. One faints, she is never seen again. Parliament no longer consults you. Your orders are filtered through councillors who meet in secret. Denny, ever loyal, reads you the last rites in early January. Though you do not hear them, you rage. You demand that none speak of death. You are God's anointed. You cannot die. But the machine that once spun at your command is stalling. The Privy Council has splintered. Conservatives, like Bishop Gardiner, cling to the old faith. Reformers rally around Edward Seymour, the boy prince's uncle. Both factions write your will before you are dead, slipping clauses past your fading attention, drafting regency plans in hushed Latin as you groan in fever dreams about Anne Boleyn's eyes and the screams of Catherine Howard. You no longer leave your bed. Your body, enormous and septic, has turned against gravity. Each movement rips skin. You howl, striking servants with your cane when they are too slow to shift your bulk. Denny brings you messages from your children. You forget which child wrote which one. The climax is not sudden. It is a dripping faucet of horror. One day, your urine darkens to black. The next, your bowels cease. Then the fever takes hold, and your brain splits apart in flashes. You mutter commands. You whisper of sins you once ordered, purged from memory. You cry for your mother. You beg God for a sign. And then you ask for your confessor. But even here, the system falters. No priest dares speak to the King of Repentance. You are the supreme head of the church. To suggest your soul is imperiled is treason. And so you die, without confession, clinging to the fiction that your kingdom is whole, that your air is strong, that your body is not a tomb wrapped in fur. The moment of death is recorded as 3 a.m, January 28th, 1547. But the real death came long before. The news is suppressed. Your corpse, bloated and putrid, is sealed in a lead-lined coffin. It begins to leak within days. On the journey to Windsor, your body bursts from within. Black liquid spills onto the church floor. One chronicler writes that dogs were seen licking the remains. Another calls it prophecy. Your burial is modest by royal standards. You are placed next to Jane Seymour, the only wife you claimed to love. But no monument is built. No grand cathedral marks your grave. The king who defied popes, who shattered faith, who declared himself second only to God, is laid to rest in an unmarked vault. And with your death, the machinery stutters. The boy King Edward ascends, He is too young, too sick. The regents fight. The bloodshed resumes. Your daughters wait in shadow, watching, learning. The world you crafted on a foundation of fear and flesh collapses under its own weight. What followed was not peace, but a vacuum, and into that void rushed chaos cloaked in ceremony. Henry VIII was gone, but the damage remained, etched into the flesh of a nation. His only son, Edward VI, barely 9 years old, was declared king. But Edward was not truly sovereign. He was frail, his bones burred thin, his lungs plagued by consumption. The real power fell to the men Henry left behind, men who had learned under him how to manipulate the throne without touching it. The country, already bruised by religious whiplash and economic strain, became a crucible of factional violence and veiled ambition. The young king would reign only 6 years before dying, emaciated and coughing blood, with none of his father's thunder and all of his frailty. Mary, Henry's eldest daughter, then ascended. Declared illegitimate in her youth, she had been forced to deny her own mother and God to survive. The years of humiliation twisted her heart. When she finally wore the crown, she did not govern. She avenged. Heretics burned in Smithfield as she tried to rebind England to Rome in flame. Her reign would end in failure, her body barren, her name forever linked to fire, Bloody Mary. Then came Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, born in scandal, raised in shadow. She had seen the scaffold claim her mother. She had learned that words were weapons and silence could be sanctuary. She survived Henry's court by mastering it. Under her, England would flourish. But even in her triumphs, the rot remained. She never married. She never named an heir. The ghost of her father, demanding, paranoid, and hungry, lingered in every decision. These were the fruits of Henry's legacy. A son dead too young, a daughter warped by vengeance, another cloaked in emotional armor so complete she trusted no one. The Tudor line would end with Elizabeth. Henry's desperate grasp for a male heir would yield only blood and fire. And England? England bore the scars. Over 800 monasteries dissolved, their art and libraries lost. Thousands displaced, some hanged, others starved. The church, once a pillar of medieval life, now a state engine polished to reflect the whims of kings. A nation taught to equate silence with safety. The institutional rot Henry cultivated outlived him. It became custom. It became tradition. Absolute power enshrined in ritual and defended by fear. The echoes are still with us. In governments that crush dissent to preserve illusion, in men elevated beyond question, in systems that permit cruelty so long as it wears a crown. We must understand. Henry was not just a man. He was a system. And systems like his do not die when bodies do. They linger, wearing new faces, speaking new tongues, but perpetuating the same cruelty, the same willingness to sacrifice humanity on the altar of power. History remembers Henry VIII as the king with 6 wives, a man who broke from Rome, a monarch who composed music and tore nations in half. But this is not history's lie, it is history's compromise. The truth is far uglier. The truth is a man who rotted alive while England bowed before the smell. The truth is a regime that polished its own blade until it slipped. The truth is a legacy not of glory, but of systemic silence, inherited trauma, and the enduring terror of unchecked power. And the most terrifying part? We built it for him, and we are still building it now.